What is going on, everybody? Thank you guys so much for joining me, and we're going to be continuing our series on my NHL 2021-2022 season predictions. And as I move along in my coverage of all these Atlantic Division teams, this video will be covering the Florida Panthers. Now, entering last season, the Florida Panthers were coming off a very disappointing, mediocre season, a team in which a lot of people had high expectations for, including myself. A lot of people see a very talented roster in this Panthers team, and year in and year out, they always seem to disappoint and they can never get over the hump or even make the playoffs and stay consistent. However, last season, they were actually a pleasant surprise, and they finally started to play to their potential. Just looking at their last season stats, they had a very solid 37, 14, and 5 record for a total of 79 points, which finished second in the Central Division on a 116-point pace over 82 games. However, in the playoffs, they did fall short, losing their first round series to the Tampa Bay Lightning, who obviously went on to win the Stanley Cup. Taking a look at their stats offensively, 3.36 goals for per game, which was very elite, 4th in the NHL, and a 20.5 power play percentage, which was 15th. And looking at them defensively, a 2.7 goals against per game, which was a pretty solid 9th in the NHL, and a 79.8% penalty kill percentage, which was more mediocre, tied for 17th. So yeah, looking at their special teams, it was, okay, middle of the package, not terrible, but not great. However, you look at their offensive and defensive stats, top 10 in both categories, very solid season all around. Now taking a look at their top 6 scorers, first being Jonathan Huberdeau, who had 20 goals and 41 assists for 61 points. Playing down in Florida, not a ton of people care about this team, but we all know that Huberdeau is a very exciting elite winger, very underrated at what he does. And in second, we have Alexander Barkov with 26 goals and 32 assists for 58 points. And here's another elite player, elite two-way center for this Panthers team, a very key piece for this organization moving forward. Then we have a two-way tie for third. First, we have Carter Verhaeghe, who had a very solid breakout season, 43 games, 18 goals, 18 assists for 36 points. This was a guy that really had trouble cracking the lineup in Tampa Bay, or if he did, he just didn't really realize his full potential offensively until he got to Florida, took advantage of the opportunity he had there playing in a top line role with Alexander Barkov, and look what happened. Amazing production. And also we have Mackenzie Weegar, who had an amazing year, 6 goals, 30 assists for 36 points for the defenseman. I mean, this was not something I expected for Weegar. I totally did not expect him to have this type of offensive upside, but yet had a very good season, and he stepped up his game, especially when Aaron Ekblad went down with injury. And then we have a two-way tie for 5th, so technically there's 6 guys in my top 5 scorers from last year. Anyway, first being Patrick Hornqvist, who in 44 games had a pretty solid 14 goals and 18 assists for 32 points. Obviously a guy who was being shipped off from Pittsburgh, pretty solid guy, was pivotal in those 2 Stanley Cup championships for the Penguins, and now coming to Florida provided some very solid depth scoring for this team. Then of course Anthony Duclair, who in 43 games had 10 goals and 22 assists for 32 points. Now compared to his previous year in Ottawa, he did not have the same type of goal scoring season, but his overall game did improve in my opinion, and he just provided a ton of offense for this team, very solid on the top 6. Then looking at their goaltending, kind of a tale of 2 goaltenders here. The better of the two being Chris Driedger, who in 23 games had a 14-6-3 record with a 2.07 goals against average and a 927 save percentage. Whereas Sergei Bobrovsky, more on the mediocre side to below average, 19-8-2 record, which is good. However, a 2.91 goals against average and a 906 save percentage. Now, obviously, this team is so lethal offensively that those guys alone can just carry the team offensively, and they don't really have to worry about getting many saves, at least in the regular season. However, Chris Driedger did step up his game, and he was a very key piece on this team in goal, so he really helped the team defensively, shut the door, and helped the Panthers be the elite team they actually were. For Bobrovsky, however, he did kind of struggle, even though he did have a really good record. Obviously, that was because of the lethal offense that the Panthers possess. But yeah, that Bobrovsky contract has not been good ever since he signed it, and unless he picks up his game and returns to Vezina form, there's going to be a ton of problems with this team in terms of their cap moving forward here. Well, I guess they'll have cap issues regardless, but the fact that Bobrovsky isn't playing up to that contract just makes it all that much worse. But apart from Bobrovsky, this was a very well-balanced team last season, and they had a terrific year. Definitely surprised me. Did a lot better than I predicted because I made my expectations lower. But, great year for them. We'll see what they do this season. So entering this season, the Panthers are definitely looking to prove that last season was not a fluke. Looking at their offseason moves, they did add some pretty decent players, but they also lost some big ones as well. The biggest addition, of course, being Sam Reinhart coming from the Buffalo Sabres, who had a very solid year in Buffalo, all things considered, despite how atrocious things were in Buffalo. But yeah, he's definitely a guy who's going to provide some very solid top 6 scoring for this Panthers team that's already stacked offensively. They also added a depth piece in Joe Thornton, who obviously is not the player he once was at 42, 43 years old, but he's still playing. He still can provide some decent offense, decent playmaking in a bottom 6 center role. Did lose some pieces though, one being Keith Yandel, who obviously fell off a cliff this past season, and they decided to just buy his ass out because, they figured he's on the decline, not the defenseman he once was. They're going to work with what they have internally here. They also lost Alexander Wenberg, who decided to sign with the Seattle Kraken. Wenberg had a pretty decent goal-scoring year, and his shooting percentage was sky high. But him parting ways with the team, that could be a little bit of a hole in terms of their center depth, but we'll see what happens. Of course, the biggest loss for me is the loss of Chris Driedger. He was unquestionably their best goaltender last season. So moving forward, Bobrovsky, if he continues to struggle, and they're going with a rookie Spencer Knight now, who has a ton of upside, but you never know with rookies. So that could be a massive loss in the goaltending position, honestly. Now that goaltending loss is a huge reason why I have them as a playoff hopeful. I'm not convinced it's a lock just because the tough division they're in, there's a lot of very good opponents. It's going to be tough for them to compete. Now obviously there's a ton of expectations, which is why they're obviously at the very least a playoff hopeful. But I'm not fully convinced that it's set in stone that this team makes the playoffs next year. Now, taking a look at who I have as the top 5 scorers for the Panthers this upcoming year, I'm actually going to say that there's a two-way tie for first place. So first, I'm going to talk about Alexander Barkov, who I have scoring 37 goals to lead the team with 54 assists for 91 points. Now, with Barkov, there's always been that discussion that, he's underrated. I don't think he's underrated anymore. I think he's purely just one of the most complete, if not the most complete player in this league. He's definitely a top 10 player. Just everything about his game is just perfect. He gives you great defensive awareness, and he's elite offensively as well. And he likely should finish over a point per game. So I have him scoring about 90 plus points. Then I also have Jonathan Huberdeau with 26 goals and 65 assists for 91 points. Now Huberdeau is just one of my favorite players to watch. I just really like his creativity with the puck. He's an elite playmaking winger, and he should also finish over a point per game. Honestly, for me, it was extremely difficult to pick between him and Barkov, who was going to lead the team in scoring. So just for fun, I said they would tie. Now, because of the stacked offense that the Panthers possess, I think it's very possible that either of these guys could score 100 points, or maybe both of them. But I feel like realistically, they probably should fall in the 90-point range. So third, I'm going to go with Sam Reinhart, scoring 27 goals and 39 assists for 66 points. Like I said before, Sam Reinhart did pretty well in Buffalo, and I would expect more of the same, if not even more, on a great Panthers offense. So he should easily get north of 60 points, especially if he's playing with guys like Alexander Barkov. In fourth, I'm going to go with Carter Verhaeghe, scoring 32 goals and 28 assists for 60 points. Now, this is purely based on the year he had last season. Now, I guess it's possible that he could take a step back and he's not quite producing at that rate. But playing on a line with Barkov, I definitely think it will elevate his production. And I definitely see 30 goal scoring potential in him and about 60 points. And in fifth, I'm going to go with Sam Bennett. 22 goals, 31 assists for a career high 53 points. Now, ever since he's gotten to Florida, he's been absolutely outstanding. He was scoring at above a point per game pace, I believe. And of course, he was a point per game in the playoffs. But Bennett always tends to show up in the playoffs. But I feel like playing on a great team like the Florida Panthers with the offense they have in a much elevated role, I definitely think he has the chemistry with Huberdeau, and he surely should get roughly 50 points. I think it's very fair for him based on what we've seen. All right, so my expectations for the Florida Panthers. Not going to lie to you guys, this might be the boldest take I have. I do think they have a very solid team. I like them offensively. I think they're, respectable defensively as well. I do expect them to have a good season. They are playing in a tough Eastern Conference. All right, so I guess I'm going to get into what I expect from this season. And it may shock you a little bit, but we'll talk about it, okay? All right, as you can see, yes, I have them finishing fourth in the Atlantic Division. That's not really a hot take. I mean, they're in a tough division, so fourth, you would expect maybe at least a wild card. I have them finishing with a 43-30-9 record for a total of 95 points. However, I do not have this team making the playoffs. I have them finishing ninth, just barely missing. Now, I know a lot of people who are overhyping this team and think that they could be a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. So hear me out here, all right? Now, obviously, a 95-point season is a good season. However, I do think that the Eastern Conference is very tight, and I have 5 teams coming out of the Metropolitan Division to make the playoffs and only 3 coming out of the Atlantic. And for me, the Panthers are the team that I feel will fall just short. Now, though I do like this team all around, I just feel like they're being a little bit overhyped by a ton of people who think they can be a contender without a clear-cut number 1 goaltender at this point. Now, again, Chris Driedger is gone. I think that's going to hurt them. Bobrovsky, I'm not totally sold on him right now. I don't know what his future is or how well he's going to play moving forward. I'm just a little bit skeptical about him in this Panthers uniform. It just hasn't quite worked out, hasn't quite panned out the way that I would have expected him to be. Now, in terms of Spencer Knight, I mean, he's a rookie. I know he played really well in a small sample size in the regular season. He was very solid in the playoffs. But I just feel like if they're going to go to Sergei Bobrovsky for the majority of the season, because they probably will. I mean, they're paying him $10 million. He has to be their starting goaltender. And if Bobrovsky does end up struggling, they're going to turn to Spencer Knight for a lot more games for a rookie. I just feel like there's going to be a ton of pressure and a ton of expectation for him to really steal the crease and be that number 1 goaltender to put this Panthers team over the top. Now, I'm not saying that he can't be amazing in his first full season and carry this team to a playoff spot. But again, it was a very small sample size, and I'm just a little bit iffy on rookie goaltenders. I'm not exactly sure how they fit well, especially going into a system like the Panthers, who are predominantly offensive, and especially with Bobrovsky struggling. If they do turn to him more, I feel like it might be a lot to ask for this guy to really, carry the team to the playoffs. Now, again, if they make the playoffs, it wouldn't surprise me one bit, but obviously Spencer Knight would have to be a key piece here. But I guess I'm just a little bit skeptical with the goaltending right now because Spencer Knight is still young. And like I said, Bobrovsky, not totally sold on him at this point. I'm just not. And part of the reason is just the rest of the Eastern Conference I just think is really tough. Like I said, I have 5 teams making it out of the Metropolitan Division. But as for the Panthers, I still think they have a great season. Like 95 points, that's a very good season. If they were playing in the Western Conference, easily a top 5 team in the West. But this could be one of those years where it's a team that's stuck in a tough conference, and ultimately the reason why they just don't quite make the playoffs. So that's going to wrap up this video and my season expectations on the Florida Panthers this season. Like I said, this is probably going to be a hot take for a lot of you, so please let me know what you guys think. I know a lot of you might disagree with me, so let me know why you think this team is a Stanley Cup contender and a top team in the Eastern Conference. Or maybe do you guys agree with me? Do you think that there should be concerns with their goaltending and maybe even their defense to a lesser extent? I don't know. It's just a weird team to judge. They're kind of a wild card for me. I mean, not literally. I mean, possibly they could be a wild card. But anyway, I'll just end the video here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Click like if you liked the video. Consider subscribing to my channel. And, don't hate. You can have your opinion. I can have mine. I know this is a very controversial pick for me not to pick them in the playoffs, especially the year they had last season. But anyway, stay tuned for the rest of the videos I'm about to post on this series. And thank you again for watching. And I'll talk to you in the next video. See you guys later.